Hello everyone and welcome back to Motorcast, and today I am back once again with Josh as we are going to be discussing this weekend's F2 events in Baku, and it was once again an absolutely crazy weekend just like we saw in the F1, obviously slightly overshadowed by the remarkable race that we saw there, but still one man once again really stood out this weekend, coming back from that double retirement of course in Monaco and still extending his lead to 42 points in the championship. That of course is Charles Leclerc, obviously coming into this race off the back of his father passing away and managed to take pole, and obviously dedicating that to him, and then going on to score a brilliant victory in the feature race, and once again dedicating that to him. So once again this weekend again showing his ability to drive at the front very very quickly, and then obviously in the sprint race his ability to overtake, coming from 8th on the grid to effectively win the race, although he finished second in the end of course with that penalty for speeding under yellow flags. No real problems for him this weekend either, apart from a fairly close moment at the pit stops with Matsushita, and also one of the restarts got fairly close, but obviously fantastic restarts in general from him under very very pressurised conditions, especially at a track like Baku, like we saw in the F1, where the safety car restarts can be very very difficult and provide a lot of drama of course. So Charles Leclerc extending his championship lead to 42 points like we said, and obviously as we've seen no one behind really able to mount a consistent challenge. So Josh, would you say at the moment, first of all, what do you make of this weekend in general, and secondly, is that now definitely the championship over despite what happened in Monaco?
I really did enjoy this weekend. Obviously the F1, as you mentioned, was really good, and F2 was really just as good. A lot of storylines, and of course, like you mentioned, really Leclerc, the massive winner from this weekend, absolutely supreme in both the feature and the sprint race, and of course, really probably should have got a double win. Was very unlucky with that kind of yellow flag penalty. I won't go into specifics, today, but it is a bit of a silly rule, really, which he was kind of falling foul of. Which was a real shame for him, but of course, as you mentioned, I don't think it really makes too much difference anyway in the championship. He's got a massive lead, and like you said, no one can really mount a serious, consistent challenge to his title charge. So yeah, certainly Leclerc looking very very good for the title, and probably one of the best weekends of his career.
Yeah, certainly an excellent weekend for him, and a very very emotional one of course as well. Obviously going to Austria next time out, and 7 rounds left in the championship now. So it's looking very, very good for Charles Leclerc. And how good would you say he is? Obviously, we've got he's got the links with Haas, and then further up from that Ferrari. And with the 2018 F1 driver market, it's kind of sort of starting to take shape. We're getting sort of the silly season rumours now, as you'd expect. Where do you see the future lying for him? What can he go on to achieve in F1? Bearing in mind what we've seen from some other guys coming through from the old GP2, obviously, and the lower categories as well.
He really is something special. He's a future Formula 1 champion, for sure. I'll say it here now. He is the future of Ferrari, I would say. He really is their protege now. Of course, unfortunate with the passing of Bianchi, and now Leclerc has kind of taken on that mantra. Of course, very very close with Bianchi as well. So it is kind of nice that he also kind of dedicated his win to Bianchi, and kind of very very close ties between his father and Bianchi as well. So that was all very very nice, and really Leclerc really has a bright future with Ferrari and in Formula 1 in general. I really hope he's on the grid next year. It would be a real shame if he wasn't. It was a shame Giovinazzi wasn't on the grid for this year, but for me Leclerc is just on that another level really, compared to Giovinazzi. Leclerc has been impressive all the way through his junior Formula career so far. Giovinazzi kind of had a bit of a breakout little year last year, but really Leclerc has been on it ever since European Formula 3, and then of course in GP3 last year, and of course and won that championship. So he's really just going from strength to strength. Really looks on it, and looks ready for Formula 1 right now. So I can definitely see a bright future for him, and hopefully that Formula 1 career will start next year. I think he's definitely got the talent, but it's just kind of where can he really fit in? I mean, Haas is kind of the obvious destination, but then you kind of need Grosjean to possibly leave because Magnussen's got a contract there. So yeah, it's tough to see where he's going to fit in, but he certainly has the talent, and certainly the determination, and certainly the backing as well. Giovinazzi was a bit of a refugee, kind of came to Ferrari kind of late in terms of the driver market, but Leclerc's got the backing right from the start. So yeah, he'll definitely be in Formula 1 soon, and possibly even jump Giovinazzi in that queue.
Yeah, definitely. I think Leclerc's kind of stood out from the recent GP2/F2 drivers that we've seen, obviously going back to the days of Lewis Hamilton, Nico Rosberg, Nico Hulkenberg. He kind of those guys kind of spring to mind in terms of what Leclerc's actually shown this year in the junior category for Formula One. But looking back at the race a bit more now, and one man who did not have a good time once again was Charles Leclerc's Prima teammate Antonio Fuoco. Obviously, with Leclerc leading the championship on 122 points, Antonio Fuoco is sitting here on just 2 points and having an incident once again after pitting with Sergio Canamassa. So where does he go from here? I mean, do Prima have to start looking elsewhere at this point?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking a bit about this, before recording, and to be honest, we were kind of in agreement that, yeah, they probably do. It kind of depends, who they could really get. It's an awkward thing, really, replacing drivers, in junior Formula where can you kind of go for a driver? I mean, obviously Sorokin possibly free after this weekend. He hasn't got much to do for the rest of the year. Maybe some kind of world endurance commitments for him, but aside from that, possibly we could see him there. It would be a bit of a strange switch, of course, but could possibly happen. But I think there are a number of drivers that really possibly could be doing a bit of a better job, with all due respect to Fuoco. I mean, he's in a really difficult situation because Leclerc is a massive talent, but Fuoco's also in that Ferrari Academy, and I think his time is pretty much done unless he can have some kind of incredible turnaround. Unfortunately, his days are limited in that academy, and possibly even in Formula 2 as well. I mean, we could see him cropping up with another team, but there's no way he's going to continue with Prema into 2018, and in terms of the rest of 2017, we'll have to see. But I think definitely they'll be looking at some different options. What do you think? Do you think there's a chance we could see kind of what we haven't really seen before in terms of one of the top kind of GP2 Formula 2 teams ditching one of their drivers?
Yeah, I think it's kind of an outstanding kind of anomalous circumstance, really. We never really see in F2 a teammate, one driver in the team leading the championship by in quite such a position that we've got with Leclerc this season, and then one driver struggling so much like Fuoco is. I mean, the only situation we could really ever compare it to is in F1 with Danny Kvyat and Max Verstappen, but obviously extremely different. It just depends what Prema have lined up, just what they see in Fuoco. Obviously, it's not as if he's been terrible in the junior categories prior to F2, so it'll be interesting to see if he kind of goes with the mantra that some other drivers have got, and where he's kind of given another chance while other drivers below him develop, or if they'll kind of be a bit more ruthless, go with that Italian kind of ruthless style, and whether it'll be straight out of the door. So that'll be interesting to see. I can't see him really going before the end of the season. I think I know he has been extremely poor this season, but he's only had half a season so far, but I think he will after the end of the season. But after that, he's going to have to be looking elsewhere. But moving on now, we obviously had an action-packed first race in Baku, the feature race. Saw plenty of safety cars, plenty of incidents. No real, last year we had the issue with Matsushita obviously slowing behind the safety car and all the incidents that came with that. But the driving standards this weekend seemed to be much better, but obviously we did still have several incidents. And one man who got caught up in an incident was Louis Delatrave, which brought out a safety car, which eventually kind of ruined Luca Giotto's weekend effectively, and he had to pit just after that safety car came out. And then obviously moving on, we had the infamous car park at turn 8, which for the first time, which has finally happened at Baku, involving Nabil Jeffrey and also Sorokin, Malia and Matsushita also getting involved at that. In fact, I think it was Sean Jalal, that went in the wall first. Jeffrey having an incident before that earlier on in the race. So quite a few incidents this weekend here in Baku. Is that kind of down to the nature of the track, or maybe these drivers having a bit of inexperience around here?
Yeah, I think definitely a mixture of both, really. We talked about kind of the more experienced drivers. I mean, Giotto, of course, had a crash in qualifying, and Giacotto crashed on the way out of the pits, the most experienced man in this series. So really a real mix of drivers, really. Pretty much everyone struggling for grip. And obviously we had a really kind of interrupted practice and qualifying session. So, drivers not really having a great deal of time, really, to learn this track, and a few kind of inexperienced, maybe a few drivers a little out of their depth lower down the field, of course, causing incidents. It was a shame to see Galale going into turn 8, of course, and then causing, like as you mentioned, that massive car park. That wasn't great to see, but certainly offered, I think, a good picture at least for people to retweet on Twitter and bash Formula 2 with. Certainly, yeah, not a great weekend for some of those guys, definitely, especially, with this, kind of 2 high races of attrition. Really, guys like kind of Camara, Delitraz, Galail, they really did want to be scoring points this weekend, with such high attrition, and really, I think, a big missed opportunity for them. Delitraz, again, struggling, he crashed in the feature race, only 16th from the sprint race. I'm really not sure what's going on with him, because he's had a real stellar kind of junior Formula record coming into this series, and it just goes to show possibly the quality of this field, really. And maybe just kind of certain teams like Racing Engineering really, really struggling recently. Malia as well, of course, got a podium in Monaco, but other than that, this season's been pretty dire for him as well. So, yeah, it's interesting to see really which teams are struggling and which drivers, coming into the series, despite having a pretty good record, not actually doing well in this series. So, yeah, not a great weekend for him, or really for Camara, or for Galail. Jeffrey as well, as you mentioned. We had Ralph Boschung, someone of course who's failed to score previously, and now did a really, really impressive job to finish 8th in the feature race, and then of course from pole position fell back to 8th. Alex, would it be kind of unfair to kind of want any more from, considering he's driving a Campos, which really has not been on the pace this year, and maybe of course his relative inexperience?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like you said, kind of a race of attrition this weekend, especially looking towards the F1. That was definitely the case, where some of the the smaller teams looked to pick up points where kind of others around them retired. And Ralph Boschung definitely did a solid job this weekend, where some of the others around him didn't. Obviously, Seti Kamara and Galail finishing 13th and 14th, and then both in the top 10 respectively in the sprint race, but unable to score points. But obviously, Ralph Boschung making it into P8 in the and then the reverse grid pole, of course, in the feature race, and then the sprint race, obviously losing the lead in a few positions as you would expect, but in a Campos that's kind of to be expected. And I think he did a very, very solid job, and I think he showed in a race where kind of driver skill comes into it a bit more, kind of driving well under pressure, keeping your cool. I think he did a very, very solid job there, and that's a weekend that maybe we could look back on as a potential turning point for him. Obviously, coming back to the feature race quickly before we move on, we saw that incident, and it obviously ended the race. So Sergei Sirotkin, who got caught up in that, was able to keep his 10th place on his return, of course, replacing Alexander Albon, who missed this weekend due to a cycling injury, I believe it was. But Sergei Sirotkin, obviously, it's a bit of a weird season for him. He's kind of in a transition period here, working with Renault, and obviously there is the talk of him potentially replacing Jolyon Palmer in F1. So with him coming back and doing a solid job, actually, it has to be said, on his return, picking up 9 points this weekend. What does the future hold for him? Maybe, obviously, very, very solid last year. And does he, maybe set an example of a potential F2 driver who could, graduate into F1 in the future?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it, with Sirotkin? He's in a bit of a weird situation. He did very, very well in GP2 over the past couple of seasons. Didn't quite really reach his full potential. Many thought he'd win the title. Didn't quite manage to do that in either of the years. I believe finished 3rd in both his years in GP2. And of course came back this weekend. I'd say did a pretty solid job. Qualifying didn't go his way. He was unlucky with the timing of the kind of red flag and the yellow flags. But overall a solid kind of haul of points in the sprint race, especially with that 4th place finish. Probably would have got reverse pole as well had it not been for that crash, of course, which prematurely ended the feature race. So slightly unlucky there. It's tough to see a future in Formula 1 for Sirotkin, really. Obviously the most obvious places are Renault, but of course they'll be looking at guys like Sainz and Perez to kind of fill that 2nd seat next season. And really Sirotkin probably won't have a say over them, really. You can't really see Renault picking Sirotkin over someone like Sainz. So it's certainly a tricky one for him, but I guess the best thing he can do is just try and impress, and I'd say he probably did that this weekend, although probably didn't blow him away. It was a bit of a shame, really, but he didn't manage to get on the podium. But certainly I'd say a solid effort. And in terms of his future, it's still very much in the air. I'd say it's pretty much 50-50 if he gets into Formula 1 at the moment. The odds probably not really with him at the moment, but as you mentioned, Palmer not doing so well is only going to help.
Yeah, I think it's one of the situations, like we mentioned kind of in the preview at the start of the season, in the kind of some talent that goes through F2 it does seem to get wasted with the driver market in F1 being as it is nowadays. But obviously now, moving on to the sprint race that we saw, and obviously Ollie Rowland, as we mentioned at the start in terms of the championship battle, getting desperately unlucky this weekend, kind of having an equivalent weekend to what Leclerc had in Monaco in some ways, I guess, with the gearbox failure from the lead in the sprint race following the move on Boschung for the lead, and obviously his penalty for speeding under yellow flags, which meant he only finished 7th in the feature race. So we're this is kind of something we touched on at the start of the episode. Obviously, no one seems to be able to really consistently challenge Charles Leclerc, and obviously once again not Ollie Rowland's fault this weekend that he wasn't able to do so. But where does he go from here in terms of this season? Is this a season where is this a season he'll be satisfied with at the moment? Obviously, kind of in a battle for second now in the championship. Do you think he'll be able to accept this, and do you think it'll help his career kind of progress, or will he kind of be stuck in what we just the sort of phase we just said about with Sirotkin when we go into 2018?
No, he's going to be bitterly disappointed, I'm afraid, with the season so far. I mean, obviously, I think he's performed pretty well. He's had a few technical issues and really probably hasn't got the most out of qualifying, especially, say, in Bahrain. He got off to a bit of a slow start of the season while Leclerc got a double podium, so he's kind of lost ground pretty much every round, of course, apart from Monaco. And really, it is such a shame, really, because I think this season he had to kind of dominate the championship to have any chance in Formula 1. He is, a lot older than Leclerc, and really his chance to succeed in Formula 1 was kind of fading, trying to get into that very, very tight grid, as we mentioned. And yeah, I've got to agree, really. He's probably in a similar kind of camp to Sirotkin, where I think he probably does have the talent to be in Formula 1, but really the opportunity and the seat just might not really be there. But, we'll have to see how it goes. Like you said, really, for the rest of the season, the best he can do is just try and, win as many races and cut that gap to Leclerc, really. And he certainly has the potential to do it if everything goes right, but, that really is a big if.
Okay, so obviously moving on now towards the a bit more towards the sprint race, we had Nick de Vries, who finished a superb second in the feature race, but obviously he's one of many examples again that suggests that the sprint race, of course, was not also without incident like we saw in the feature race. And Nick de Vries, unfortunately for him, retiring, but still having a fairly solid weekend, showing once again his pace. And can he now move on maybe to Austria and Silverstone, some tracks that he's gone well out in the past, and maybe pick up some solid points there?
Yeah, he's got real potential to kind of finish as the second highest rookie. He's already, I think, the second highest rookie in the championship, but he can certainly put in some really good performances. I think it's kind of a tight battle probably between him and Albon, of course, once the Thai driver comes back into Formula 2, which will hopefully be in Austria. And like you said, he knows those kind of tracks a lot more than he does Baku. First time in Baku, of course, for Nick de Vries. So a really solid effort, and it was such a shame that he retired from that sprint race, that he made that mistake. Otherwise, it'd have been a double podium and a real solid point haul for him, and would have probably moved up to about 4th in the championship. So yeah, real kind of big potential for him. And really, we were talking about kind of who could replace Fuoco before. Well, it'd be great if those two could kind of swap seats at the moment. Really, it'd be really cool to see someone like de Vries in that Premier seat. Kind of reunite the old ART partnership of Leclerc and de Vries, of course, from the GP3 days. So yeah, really good stuff from Nick de Vries. But still, of course, a shame with that sprint race. He hasn't had a really good weekend yet, which I think we're really kind of waiting for. And really, when everything goes right, everything falls into place, he's going to have a really strong weekend for sure.
Yeah, like you say, Nick de Vries not really yet seen his full potential this season. Obviously, 7th and the 1st in Monaco, and then 2nd DNF in Baku is just kind of captures the inconsistency he's had really this season. But I guess there is an argument actually that he could be the one to challenge Charles Leclerc on a weekend where everything kind of goes right for him, because we've seen he's definitely got the speed, but just really needs everything to fall into place. But talking more about the sprint race now, obviously it was a very action-packed race with plenty of overtaking down that long pit straight, of course, with many drivers such as Giotto, Matsushita, obviously Norman Nato and Charles Leclerc, as well as Sirotkin, all making their way through the field at various points in the race. So what did you make of that sprint race, Josh? Did it show perhaps the quality of the field we've got in F2 this year, and once again emphasising maybe the more exciting racing in Baku that we perhaps didn't get to see last year due to the obviously the situation with Matsushita and the safety car restart?
Yeah, some much better driving standards this year, arguably better than the F1 guys. So really good to see, good advert for Formula 2. Wasn't quite the chaos we saw last year, but overall a really good weekend, some great racing, and some real kind of stars of the weekend as well. Of course, Leclerc probably the biggest star. Markelov put in a solid kind of quiet stint. Nato did really well to win the sprint race. Great for him to kind of bounce back. Because we were kind of talking, I think the last few episodes were really just not going right for him. Spain and Monaco certainly didn't, and it was great to see a change of fortunes really for him. And of course, Arden's first win in a very long time, I want to say, in this series. So great for their team as well. Latifi getting a double podium as well. That was a bit of a surprise, possibly. I mean, he's been in good form recently. Should have won in Spain, of course, but that kind of broken mirror, halted his charge. And I think his first ever double podium in his car racing career, which I thought was an interesting stat, which I'm not quite sure if it's true, but I'm going to roll with it anyway. So a good kind of purple patch of form that Latifi has found himself in is quite the match for Roland as well. So really good for Dams to have two drivers really up there, which to be honest I really didn't expect before the season, and they're only 3 points off the top of the championship, Dams. So solid shift from both of them.
Yeah, I think that covers off the majority of the guys who shone through. Obviously this weekend, like you said, Norman Nato having a terrible start to the season so far, despite that second place in Bahrain, and we've talked about it pretty much every episode, how things have just gone so downhill for him, but of course all coming together this weekend. And obviously, despite the penalty for Charles Leclerc, that was really a victory he had to earn, with plenty of overtaking going on, like we mentioned. And as you were saying, Nicholas Latifi having a great weekend, especially shining once again in that sprint race, and Artem Markelov, keeping fairly under the radar ever since that win in Bahrain, but he's done once again a solid job this weekend, and a crazy race in which, like we were saying, Matsushita, Giotto, those sorts of guys made their way through the field with, as you were saying, a fantastic advert for not just Baku in general with the F1 race as well, but especially the the standards of driving in F2, a massive improvement on last year. One last man we haven't touched on just yet is Jordan King. Obviously, once again, a fairly quiet start to the season, albeit a very consistent one, and taking that 6th place, of course, in the feature race before having the most painful of disqualifications for his tyre pressure, of course, in the sprint race. So that was a real shame for him. Looking a bit further down the order, and as we were saying earlier, a few of the guys will be disappointed not to, apart from Ralph Boschung, of course, disappointed not to pick up some points this weekend in a race where you would expect many cars to kind of not finish, and several of them, of course, crashing out in the feature race, like we were saying, with Jeffrey Delatraz, Fuoco, of course, and Johnny Cicotto as well. So that just about rounds it off for Baku. Moving on now, of course, we go to Austria in 2 weeks' time, as of the final race of the weekend in Baku. So what can we expect from that one, Josh? Obviously, seeing as it's kind of a track that we've been to in the past, usually provides very good racing. We've seen some wet races there in the past, of course, in the old GP2. Fair number of incidents, of course, especially for Artem Markelov in the past at that track. So, what can we expect from that one? Can we expect to see Charles Leclerc dominate again?
No, I would say. And hopefully I'm right.
Yeah.
I think there will be some real good competition there. I really do like Austria as a track. I think it's really open. I think it's hard for anyone really to dominate that weekend because it's so kind of easy to overtake, and it's pretty hard to pull away because basically the whole track is a bunch of straights really and DRS zones. So I think it's really good for racing, and it's really good for spec racing, of course, which Formula 2 is. If we kind of cast our minds back to last year, that was when Evans in Galeil got a 1-2 for Campos on a real kind of alternative strategy, a bit of a fluke really, but we that's definitely another possibility really of seeing that in Austria, because traffic is a really kind of pain for some of the drivers really, and if you have a bit of free air you can really kind of pull away, and that's exactly what they did. Jordan King as well won the sprint race there, so that would be of course a great way for him to kind of come back from this disqualification. We had problems for both Gasly and Giovinazzi last year, so title contenders did not fare well here in Austria last year, so maybe that's a bit of an omen for Leclerc and Roland, but we'll have to see. I think it's going to be real good competition. If you remember, Leclerc in GP3 last year had a bit of a major incident. It was his first kind of blip of last season, and that kind of rocketed his championship charge a bit. It took a bit of time really to recover from that, so let's see how he fares in Austria. But yeah, should be really close, should be really open, and it's I think really hard to predict who's going to win this one. But I'm going to completely contradict what I basically just said and say Leclerc's still going to win a race. He's certainly going to get a pole position, and then I'm going to say Nick de Vries to get the sprint race victory.
Yeah, I think like you said, Austria is certainly a track where it's kind of open. It's kind of a joker in the pack, really, if you want to put it that way, where strategies and kind of the unique nature of the track can kind of make for some spectacular racing. And of course, it makes it very, very open for the sprint race as well. Shows that it's one of the tracks where the guys who are generally good at overtaking rather than having the one lap speed will normally shine through. But like you said, I would expect Charles Leclerc to take pole position, and it kind of depends really on any there's many things that could go wrong for him around Austria, and like you said, not having the best of time around there in GP3, but to play it safer now, I will say Leclerc to take the victory in the feature race, and I think he will again get up onto the podium, at least potentially in the sprint race, obviously with his overtaking ability and the opportunities that Austria presents. But to be honest, I can see a slightly different winner in the sprint race. I could see maybe someone like Artem Markelov, coming back from last year potentially, or Luca Giotto if he can have a solid weekend, and obviously Nick de Vries, as you mentioned, could be in there as well. So it's a very, very open and unpredictable one, Austria. So certainly looking forward to that one in 2 weeks' time before we head off to Silverstone, of course, the week after that. But that is going to be it for today, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this discussion and review of the F2 weekend in Baku. A crazy one, like we were saying. And make sure to leave a like and comment your thoughts on the weekend down in the comment section below, and subscribe for more regular motorsport content. Our Twitters, as well as the official Motorcast one, will be in the description. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.